Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Chargers, it's been a change of pace these last 6 weeks for our world, but let's take the positives that's come from this pandemic. I know I appreciate some of the smaller things in life that I took for granted before. How about the smell of fresh flowers blooming, the beauty of trees budding to life, and the fresh cut of grass? As we start to move forward in this month of May, don't let the time just pass you by. Let's remember to live each day with that openness to experience life and be grateful for the small things in our life each day. My hope is you have renewed in yourself a new sense of wonder to take each day as a blessing. Let's remember to be present in our life and not just get through life. Remember our mantra of charge, create habits around real goals every day. Chargers, I recently recorded a webinar entitled Positive Habits Equal Positive Results. If you are a leader who struggles with how to handle the daily stress in your life, with high performance coaching, we've created a framework that helps leaders gain clarity, energy, courage, productivity, and influence. When you get clarity, you get the feeling of full engagement, joy, and confidence that comes from consistently living from and into your full potential. To view this webinar, go to chargepodcast.com and we will have a link to the webinar on the page. Each week this month, we have a great guest lined up that will give you a perspective on how you can live your life with high performance. Who has all the sales your company can handle? Our guest today, Chris Chura, shares with small business owners how to improve their sales process and coach their salespeople to increase sales revenue that frees the business owner for other priorities. Let's take a listen on how we can take charge to increase our sales. Welcome, Chargers. We're glad you decided to come listen to another one of the Charge podcasts. We're so glad each week you make time for us to learn, to grow, and really decide what can help you. And today I've got a great subject for you because nothing happens unless you sell something. So it doesn't matter if you're in business or how about when you sold, or maybe you haven't yet, if you're young, your spouse to marry you. You're selling in that aspect. So we're going to talk a little bit about sales today. And my friend Chris Chura, he's the owner of Chura Consulting LLC out of St. Louis, Missouri. Chris grew up in St. Louis and lived there most of his life. After graduating from the Missouri State University, he worked for companies like AT&T Wireless Retail and RadioShack, which gave him the real education in direct and retail sales, sales management, and sales coaching. For most of his career, he has worked with small businesses and franchise owners. Chris is passionate about helping entrepreneurs to get the most out of their business. Chris Chura, it is great to have you on the Charge Podcast. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Gary. It's great to be here.
Well, we are glad to have you, and you and I go back to our AT&T and some of those wireless phone days. So
That's right.
So great to be able to bring back someone that we had connection with, and it's great to see you and seeing what you're doing now. And then you're really covered a passionate area for me because, as you know, I'm very passionate about small business and entrepreneurs, and so I can't wait to get in this conversation. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about my mantra. As I told you, it's charge. Create habits around real goals every day. And I love hearing from my guests on what habit or habits do they think has helped make them successful in life. What would you say to that, Chris?
Well, when you talk about real goals every day, that's really how I approach it, is daily. I work out of my house. My office is in my home. So I have to have that kind of dedication to get up every morning, just do your easy stuff like shower, shave, and be ready to go and be dressed. Even though I'm not reporting to an office, that helps get my mindset right that I'm here to do business today, even though I'm not out working with a small business owner or in front of a client. So an everyday approach for me is making sure I follow that regime. And unless I'm sick or in the hospital, that's what I do.
Yeah, and I think that's the key is, you know, we have a lot of people that they're working on their own, and the challenge they have is getting themselves really in place to be able to do what they need to do, because it's easy to do something else, like throw a load of laundry in and not make that phone call. And we'll talk some about sales, but it comes in even in our own life. We have to make that dedication as how are we going to move forward?
Right, because not everybody can work on their own. Some people they need to be in office around people to make sure it's real for them and that they're actually feel like they're accomplishing something. So it's not for everybody.
Well, you're helping small business owners and entrepreneurs, I think, in a critical role, because sales drives every business. Because as you and I talked offline, is revenue solves a lot of problems. If you don't have a lot of revenue, there's a lot more problems that come up because those bills come in and overhead and employees want paid and all those things that go with that. So I'm curious to hear, why did you decide to start Chura Consulting and do the work that you're doing?
Well, and you hit on this earlier, Gary, that you are an entrepreneur and business owner yourself back to the AT&T wireless days. So most of my business career, I've actually worked with franchise business owners, which are small business owners, and then non-franchise ones. But there's a special place in my heart for the small business owner because, they're risk takers. They're putting their own sweat equity and their capital out there and making it happen. And there's no guarantee that it's going to be successful. They're competing with bigger companies and corporations. So if I can do something that's going to help them be successful, that gives me a big charge. That's a good why, a good motivator for me, is to help somebody who's out there doing it for themselves. So I saw all the experience I had over the years working with small business owners, working with their salespeople, doing sales coaching, helping with their sales management, with product development, marketing. And I looked at all that and said, I could go and do this on my own and help some people out locally here in St. Louis. So that's when I decided I'm going to come up with my own consulting company and work with the small business owner, especially on the sales and marketing arena.
Yeah, and that's such a vital role because a lot of small businesses get started and entrepreneurs start because they're passionate about something, or they've created something, or they've decided to buy a franchise, as you've talked about. And the thing is they may not be good in sales themselves. And to be quite honest, some of them just first realize when they start their business, oh my gosh, we've got to sell something now.
Exactly. And when I work with a small business owner like that, usually they have a small sales force of, say, maybe 10 to 12 people or less. And three things are important. Number one, most of them cannot afford to bring a full-time sales manager in and run that sales force. I don't know if you know this, but if you go to glassdoor.com, I looked up what the average pay is for a sales manager in St. Louis. What do you think it is, Gary? Any idea?
I happen to see it on your website, so
okay.
I know, but go ahead. 92,000, right?
Yeah, it's just under 92,000.
I did my homework.
Yeah, there you go. You're reading it. I appreciate that. So that's a lot of money. And most business owners, that's just, you're not going to.
They're not taking home that much.
No, they're not going to get their return on investment. So that's number one. Number two is sometimes they'll look at the top salesperson and say, well, they're doing a great job. I'm going to make them the manager. But they're not necessarily ready to manage a group of people. And now you got to manage the people you just worked with. That's a tough transition. That doesn't work a lot of times. And then number three is the owner realizes, well, someone's got to do this. So I, as the owner, will try to manage sales when I can, along with the other 100 things I have on my plate. So usually those three scenarios do not work well. And this is where I come in.
That's excellent. I'm glad you said that, because that number two that you talked about there, I think is so huge, because I think one of the things that happens is we make people leaders. And of course, they're your best salesperson. And then when they become the leaders, the business owner really gets surprised, because what happens is normally sales drop. Because
right, because you just lost your top salesperson,
yep.
and now you've thrown someone to management who hasn't really had a lot of training. And
yeah, and to be quite honest, most salespeople that are really good, they don't want to manage other people. Yeah. They want that freedom. They want that independence. Plus, where they get their charge is working with their customers, and they truly enjoy that. So when you make them that leader, and now they've got these other responsibilities, those come in. And I'll be honest, and from my history, we had some of that challenge when I had the retail stores. We'd make our best salespeople the sales team leaders, and we'd find out business go down. And it's like, whoa. And then we started realizing, no, it's not about finding that. It's about finding that person that can really do that job, and then really realizing that part of it. So I've seen those exact same three things that you said. And I've seen the part of it with my coaching. The boss, the owner, decides to do the sales managing. And the problem is they don't have the time, so there's no accountability. And we know one thing about salespeople is true, and I'm sure you understand this and agree, Chris, is one thing salespeople don't like is to normally be accountable.
Yeah, just leave me alone and I'll bring in the business and just let me do my thing.
Yeah, that's always there. So talk about a little bit of your philosophy and how you do this, because with your small and medium business owners philosophy that you have, and with the consulting work you do, how do you walk them through that process to be able to kind of understand they don't have to have a full-time sales manager to be able to run their organization?
That's a great question, Gary. What I typically do is, when I get an appointment to sit down and talk to a small business owner, I'll warn them it's probably going to be a good hour, because I need to get some information from you to see what you've got in place, and then you're going to have questions for me. But my overall philosophy, and this will probably surprise a lot of people out there, I look at the process first that small business owner has in place or doesn't have in place. And then I look at people second. The reason for that is, many times when I sit down, I look at their lead generation. How are they cultivating those leads? Who are they handing them off to? Do they have a good marketing and advertising plan? I look at the process and decide, okay, here's some gaps in here. Here's where I think we can improve things. Here's my advice on how we can do that. I think a lot of business owners, small and large, think, well, our sales are off, or they're down from last year. I need to kick my salespeople in the pants, or maybe I just need to hire somebody new because it's not working. If you get new people in to replace the old ones, they're still working at an imperfect system you got in place. So fix the system first, the process. Then I sit down and do some coaching and mentoring individually with the salespeople one-on-one, and see where some of their weaknesses are and where we can, tweak things and make it better. So the philosophy is a little different, but I found that that's worked well. And the sales QB program that you probably saw on my website, that is their philosophy too, is they look at the process first and make sure you've got what's called a PRSP, which is a proven repeatable sales process. So everybody is on the same game plan and can follow the same good process you've got in place.
Well, I saw that on the website, and I'm curious about that because it talks about the path to guarantee growth. Do you mind if maybe we walk through those steps and
Sure.
You share a little bit about that? Because number one, there's somebody listening here that's needing your services that's there. For other people, it's about what can you take from what Chris is sharing with us. He's teaching us now. And how can you implement this into your business? Or do you have these steps in your business that's there? I'll be honest, as I looked at it, I realized a couple pieces that I've got missing right now. I'm the salesperson as well as the person that's got to generate the leads. And I need some of that repeatable business that's there. I have some clients that are definitely repeatable. But of course, when you get busy, you stop some of that lead generation. So how do you work that out? So if you don't mind, we'll kind of just walk through a little bit. I'll let you share a little bit of what that area is, because I think that will help our business owners kind of understand what kind of processes they need to think about. And then, of course, hopefully they'll realize that if they don't have that, they've got a resource now of someone they could go to. And that's called Chris Chura Consulting, and someone that works in that area. So the first one you talk about, or that talks about the path to guaranteed growth, is the sales best practice audit. Really looking at that. I think you visited that a little bit, but you really want to audit. And is that part of the process as well as what they're doing and how their organization goes through their sales process?
Yes, that's typically the first step, is where I sit down and just have a conversation, kind of like what you and I are doing right now.
Sure.
But I have a list of certain questions I know I need to ask. And by asking those questions, I find out, okay, what do you have in place, or do you have anything in place? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes their leads are just referrals, which are good leads, but they don't use any search engine optimization, or maybe they're not using much marketing. So I look at, okay, what do you have in place now? How's it working? Do you know there's any things that frustrate you or that aren't working? Just tell me right up front, so I know to concentrate on that too. So I do that as an audit. And then after I leave them, I come back to my office and I put together and generate a big report, black and white, that shows them, here's what you told me you've got. Here's the suggestions that I think we can do. And then we meet again and we talk about that.
Okay, great.
So you get audit.
Yeah. So you get a good audit. You know where you're at, where you want to move forward with. So I think that's really important. And then, of course, one of the challenges, and I think a lot of businesses have this, because nothing happens unless you got leads. So try to increase it. Number 2, it says increased lead generation efficiency. Because some people, their efficiency is the part that's hurting, and they're not getting enough leads for some people is part of the challenge there. So tell me a little bit about that, if you don't mind, is how do you really kind of create where they generate more lead generation?
Well, right. So when you're looking at that, that's a good general question I lob out there to them is, okay, where are you getting your leads from? And sometimes, the more honest they are, the better. Sometimes owners are like, I'm not sure where they all come from.
Don't know.
Right. And, some business owners say, well, part of what I expect my salespeople to do is to cold call and go beat up the bushes and find their own leads. And maybe that teaches them some good practices of getting in front of people and talking to them. But the problem is that a salesperson's best use is to close business and bring it into you. So I'm a believer that it's okay if they're out between calls and they want to do a cold call, but really you should be working on generating leads at your end through a good marketing process. Now, what's the best process? It really depends on your business, and doing some homework and looking at those search engine optimizations. What kind of advertising are you doing? Do you have things that plug into your website or your, what would they call the CRM? People hear that term these days, the customer relationship module. So there's a lot to look at, but basically I look at it with them and say, okay, but let's look at what's the best method and what you're doing right and what you're not doing. And let's work on getting those leads. And then we call a scoring a lead, which means sometimes it's a basic contact back to that lead that you got. Hey, I saw that you were on our website. I got your information. How can I help you? Or I'll have one of our salespeople contact you. Because who knows, maybe it's a PhD student working on their grad work and they just want to contact you for information in your industry. Well, they're not going to be selling. You're not going to be getting business from them. So qualify them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I love the philosophy you talk about is if they're warm leads, your salespeople are going to do so much better. Our role as really business owners is to really generate the leads and get them in place. And it doesn't matter if you have a retail storefront or if you have where you're going out and you have people that sell out there. When people come in and they're more warm and they know more about your products, they're going to be ready to purchase. And it's about having your salespeople ready for those moments that's there. When we were in the wireless industry, it was a heck of a lot easier. That is an industry that people saw change, but now you carry a mini computer in the palm of your hand. But the challenge was at that point, you had to explain to people what were the benefits of having some of that. But when people come in, they should be kind of ready, or at least they're thinking about it. And if sometimes it's also, we have people that go external and go out and see their clients about their products and services. Well, then it's about how can you kind of really lead generate it to get those leads warmed up for them. And then I love your philosophy here, because I think this is a mistake that in any business model out there, and it doesn't matter if it's sales, if it's in the operations, the paperwork, any side of the business, this is an area that people are weak in. A small business is one of their greatest challenges. One thing I think the corporate world has in a better performance than a lot of small businesses, create a proven, repeatable sales process. And when I'm talking about in other areas, about process in general is what kills small business. Because we have Johnny here that's selling for us today, and then Johnny leaves and everything goes with him. But if you have a true sales proven process, you can find Jack now that you can fit into where Johnny was and get them up quicker, and having that proven process. So I'm sure that's some of what you're talking about with that proven and repeatable sales process. And how critical do you think that is, Chris, for organizations?
It's very critical. It's really critical, Gary Lynn. You just hit on a good reason to have it in place. Number one is anybody you bring in new can automatically fill in and say, all right, you can hand them documentation, show them this is how we do this. This is how we're going to help and support you. Follow these guidelines and you're good. But it also makes sure that all the people in your company are working on the same game plan. If you got marketing, even your office assistant or your office manager, if they're the ones that contact leads to verify them, they need to know what the process is and what they're supposed to do next. So it really solidifies the whole process for everybody in your organization.
Yeah, it just becomes critical. It's one that I tell you, I read a book called Clockwork, and it's just one of those that is very, very important, by Mike Michalowicz. And it's not just in sales, but if you can get those processes down in your business, you will grow your business faster each and every time. And I just really can't tell our business owners enough to really get that process in place. And then your next one, I mean, we've been in the technology business. This one is huge. If you're still doing things the old fashioned way, you've got to change, because it's not about having a website now. Now you've got to be on social media. You've got to find other ways to attract your clients. And I can't tell you, because every business is different. I'm sure Chris can't tell you, but you've got to be out there showing your clients that you're available, and leveraging technology becomes huge. And that was number 4, is leveraging that technology. And I think you're thinking from both ends, not only on your marketing side, but also I'm sure you're thinking on the internal side as you're reaching out to your clients. Is that correct, Chris?
It is, and you're the perfect example of that, Gary. You're doing a podcast right now. That's something that 20 years ago, somebody would probably go, what podcast? What's that? So, right, you got to look at, even if you're not a technical person, and a lot of owners aren't by trade, find somebody who is, or get somebody like me who can step in and at least steer you in the right direction. But you need to be using, there's a lot of people, I don't want to do all this too long. I know there's a lot to talk about, but you got a generation out there now, younger than us, that they like to be anonymous. They like to go and get information off of websites and off the internet. They're not ready to give you their name and number and all that. They want to get their information first, and then they'll come to you and say, all right, I'm ready to buy. So you've got to make yourself available for that. And a good CRM with technology will do that.
Yeah. That becomes huge. It's really a big deal for people. So if you don't have the experience, that's where you're getting the experts to find that out. And there may be some people on your team, they can help with that, but find out, how are people finding out about you? Because today it's not if you want a website, you must have a website, but it's not just about a website, but you got to make that website available via mobile. Because if you're at a certain age, they're not looking on a computer like Chris and I, looking you up. They're looking you up right on their phone at that moment. I mean, we know it's true with restaurants, but it's more than just restaurants. People, when you go into a community, they can find anything they want, all at the palm of their hands. So are you prepared for that? And are you ready for that? The next one, you talk about improved sales management, and the whole process becomes that. But I'm sure you go into organizations and sales management is, well, at the end of the month, what's your numbers? And
Right.
there's just a little bit more to it than that, isn't there, Chris?
Yeah, most sales managers is a little more on the reactive side. In other words, they're reporting back to the owner or their division of sales, a vice president, whoever it is they answer to. But with the small business owner, they're usually talking directly to the business owner saying, all right, here's how we did in sales for this month compared to the same month last year or whatever they're up against is. And gosh, I guess we could do this to try to improve that for next month. And so they're more reporting and they're more looking back and talking to salespeople. Well, what did you have problems with? What did we do wrong? It's really better to have a proactive approach and sit down. And some of it is a simple idea I come up with is every time a salesperson goes out to talk to a prospect, they should have a goal with what that sales call is going to be. Don't just go out with the mindset that I'm going to get the business. Well, of course you want to get the business, but all right, what's your first step? Is your average sales calls 2 to 3 of them before you actually get the customer based on the product that you're selling? Well, if it is, it's probably not realistic to go out there on that first sales call with that prospect and just assume that you're going to get that sale today. So have a goal in mind and use that when you're going out to visit.
Yeah, and that falls right in from management. We go from management into how can we improve those sales performance, individual performance that's there, looking at each one of them and what are the key factors that they need to do to be able to improve. I mean, your path really walks you through very nicely. I like your process that you have, Chris, because it's really about a true process from start to finish, because
Right.
the salespeople individually, most salespeople are, let's be honest, normally not that critical of themselves. When they have a bad month, I was just off a little bit. But when you are truly tracing some of those performance metrics and knowing what those are of like, how many calls did you make this month? Normally they make 50 or 100 calls, whatever that number is. And this month they only made 25. Well, why is sales numbers off? You can start seeing some of those trends there. So that sales performance becomes huge that's in there. And I'm sure you see in organizations there, a lot of them, they don't even know what they are doing when they are making their calls in a lot of organizations. Do you?
Right. And that's where the business owner, it's just, they've got so much on their plate. They just don't have the time to follow up one-on-one with their salespeople and ask the same questions you just asked. Okay, well, what's different from this month from the previous month when you did better? They just don't have the time to do that. Sometimes they'll see someone who's suffering, one of their salespeople not doing well, and they'll ask some general questions, but you really got to sit down and have what I call a hot seat. Just sit down one-on-one with them and say, all right, walk me through it. You didn't get this sale, so what did you and your prospect say exactly? And you listen to what's being said and what's not. And that's where you start the coaching process.
Yeah. And that becomes the real key is how can you coach them into the behaviors that you're trying to get? You're trying to change behaviors. I mean, that's what sales management is. Sales processes allows you to do is about the behaviors. If you hit the behaviors, I've always heard a theme called BAT, behavior, attitude, technique, but you got to do the behavior. You got to have the attitude to be able to get there, but then you got to use the technique. Sales is about having a technique that's there. And for small organizations, you have the capability of doing it. And that's one thing I loved about you. And when I saw your information, I wanted to have you on the podcast, Chris, because number one, it's a proven path. Number one, from sales best practice audit to increase your lead generation efficiency, to create a proven, repeatable sales process, to leveraging technology to improve sales management, to improve sales performance. You walk them through a process to be able to have that organization now be able to implement something and be able to follow it. And I'm sure one of your challenges is, I'm sure this takes time frame to be able to do it. And some organizations never get big enough that they can keep using your services. But sometimes you put yourself out of business with that client because they grow, right?
Yes, but when I step in and become their part-time sales manager, which is the ultimate goal to help them out, is I find that many times they'll keep me on and the salespeople will start reporting to me. And I report back to the owner with how everything's going because they see the value of somebody running that for them. So sometimes it goes a lot longer than you might think.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, I know there's small businesses out there. You're struggling in sales and it's a challenge. And Chris works with small and medium-sized business owners that's out there. So Chris, what would be one thing is if I'm a business owner and I'm hearing this and it sounds good, what would be one thing that you would tell them to think about for themselves to be able to help them really take a look at it? Besides, of course, they should call you and check you out, and I'll have you give your information here in just a minute and stuff. But what's one thing you would tell them what's the first step they need to really take?
I think they need to sit down one-on-one with somebody's opinion that they respect, someone that will tell them what they need to hear, and ask them, preferably somebody they work with there, whether it's an office manager or a manager or someone, just tell them, all right, hit me with this. What do you feel is some things that I can improve on my end for the business, particularly sales and marketing? Because you probably got some people there that you work with that probably know. They probably want to tell you, but nobody's reached out to them and asked them. So they're like, well, I guess there's no one interested, so I won't say anything. But give us somebody you know and trust there at the work that can give you that 10,000-foot level look and can tell you, well, here's some of the things I see a problem with. Here's what the salespeople are telling me. I hear complaints from them sometimes. You have a starting point where you can have a conversation with somebody. The other option, of course, is to bring me in and have that conversation with me, and we'll be able to figure out pretty quickly where some areas of improvement.
Well, I love what you mentioned there because there's the opportunity of two different ways. There's one opportunity of, number one, get your input from your team. And then I would tell you, and Chris wasn't going to tell you this, but I will tell you, then get that third party viewpoint. That's what consulting is all about, is finding someone that you can trust, know, like, and trust, and that can tell you some of those challenges. Because otherwise, as the business owner, you're scratching your head, and sometimes you don't always have all the solutions. But your job as the business owner is to find the solutions. And you can find that consultant to come in and find. And Chris, I'm sure, would tell you the same thing. Talk to a couple different people, but find what fits you and what is missing in your link. He's got a proven system that's available. If that works for you, great. But if not, and if someone else, then put that in place in your organization, because that's how you're going to change the revenue goal versus saying we need to increase sales. That doesn't do anything. You have to do something behind that. So Chris, I truly appreciate you sharing that. And thank you for allowing us to walk through that kind of path to guaranteed growth, because, in 2020, I know I've got some business owners that want to keep growing out there. Is there anything else? And if you would, before we end up here, we're going to go into the recharge round. If you would share anything else that you'd like to be able to tell the business owners that's listening. And then also, if you would, share how they can reach out to you if they'd like to check out your information.
Sure, absolutely, Gary. I guess the last question first. The best way to reach me is I have my own website, and it's Chura Consulting. So that's CHURA consulting.com. And I've got the path to guaranteed growth, which you were just talking about, listed on there, along with other videos and information that can help them out, questions they can ask themselves. So I got that. My email address is cchura@yahoo.com. So you can email me directly. And if you go to my website, there is a contact form they can fill out also for more information. I can reach out to them. The other thing I'd like to say, just so your people know, and the small business owners that are listening, this path of guaranteed growth, it wasn't something where somebody sat down in a laboratory and said, okay, I think these things are going to work. The antithesis behind it is the owner of that program, a guy named Jim Muehlhausen. For the past 15 to 20 years, he's had CEO focus groups that he meets with small business owners, and they bounce ideas off each other and have other business owners along with him to talk to. And he found, having conversations with these CEOs, that there was a need for some sales management type of coaching and training. And when he saw that theme coming up so much, he realized, well, I need to come up with a plan where we can specifically help them with their sales and marketing end. And that's where this came to fruition, was this plan to guaranteed growth.
Excellent. Well, one thing is, no, you can check out the website. If you didn't get that wrote down as you were driving or exercising, go to chargepodcast.com and you can check it out. And all that information will be in there for Chris. Chris, thank you for sharing that, because I know sales, to me, it's the critical component to make a successful business. Because if you don't have sales, the rest makes it really difficult to really make your business grow and really be able to do the things that you want to do each and every day. So such a practical podcast and the information that you shared with us. So I've got some questions for you, because this is our recharge round. We're going to go through these pretty rapidly, but share with me why you believe your mindset affects your life each and every day.
Your mindset, it affects everything you do. Even from a sales point of view, before you get on the phone and make a call and try to reach a prospect, you gotta be cheery. You actually want to physically smile before you get on the phone, because if not, it'll come through. So if your mind's not right, the customers, they're smarter than you think. They're going to hear it, and they're not going to believe you that you believe in yourself. So you gotta have, no matter what's going on in your life, you gotta have the right mindset and make sure that put that behind you. You got something else to do today.
What do you do daily to bring energy in your life?
Well, I believe that you should not only have mental awareness, but physical too. And especially somebody in their 50s, it's not easy to keep in shape. So I like to always be reading some type of book. You mentioned a book earlier that you read before that you really liked.
Clockwork.
Clockwork. And I've got books that I read also. Some are self-help, some are not, but they're great books and they teach you life lessons. So I like to keep on top of reading something at all times that I'm working on. And I try to get to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, because, if you're physically run down, that affects your mind. So I like to keep that going in my life, physically and mentally, so I at least can control that part of it, not how people react or talk to me.
Yeah. I loved how you shared the mental aspect as well as the physical aspect, because a lot of people think energy is all about our, physical aspect, but mental energy is huge too. And people listening to this podcast, I'm talking to the choir here, but that's why you're listening, is you're learning new things that now you can implement, you can check out and you go after. How about the number one connection or relationship that's made the biggest impact on your life?
I had a really good mentor, and it was just a small part of my business experience when I was in Florida. And about a year and a half, I sold life insurance, and I found out, I decided it wasn't for me. It's not what I wanted to do, but my mentor was a great guy named Andy Riddle. And he was one of them that really turned me on to, Chris, you should be reading something all the time. This isn't a job where you just go out and meet with families. He goes, you should be keeping your mind going strong. And that connection was important, because ever since then, I've been trying to keep on top of that and do that. He really stressed the importance of improving yourself and improving your attitude. So that's why I first got on to reading.
Good. What advice has influenced you the most in your life, Chris?
Wow, that's a good one. I think it was from my brother and a couple of other strong people in my life. They always say, count your blessings, appreciate what you've got. If no matter how bad something might be going for you, or you're thinking, wow, why did this happen to me? The old question, why me? You can always remember or know somebody who's got it a lot worse than you do. And if you just remember, count your blessings, appreciate what you've got going in your life, and it makes the downfalls and the things that don't go right pretty minuscule.
That's for sure. And everyone's in different parts in their life, but realizing where are you at and counting the blessings that you have, you really see that show up. We've talked about this a couple times, Chris, but I'll let you recommend a book that you've read and share why you love it.
There's a great book I read last year. It's called Educated. And this was actually on, I think it was Bill Gates' list of books that he suggests. What's awesome about this book, Gary, it's a really life lesson. I'll just go quickly. I don't want to do a full book report, but the author, Tara Westover, she grew up in rural Idaho. from a very poor family and an oppressive father that always said, the Lord will find the way for you. You don't need education. So she was homeschool taught a little bit by her mom, but not much. And with her own tenacity and reaching out to other people that were educated on her own, she actually got into BYU. And she didn't even have a high school education. And then she went on to Harvard and Cambridge and got a PhD. And it's just amazing when you read through her life struggles of what she had to break out of with her home life and what she had to do to go and get education herself. And it really is an inspiring story. So I suggest people read that book. It's a great book.
Great. We will have the notes and we'll have all the information in chargepodcast.com so you can check it out. And I have not read that one, have not heard about that one. So thanks, Chris. I will be checking it out myself. How about the last question? You've almost made it through the gauntlet here. But the last question is, what legacy do you want to leave the world in one sentence or less?
I would like to think that I've helped others realize their potential. Not everybody knows that. Some might think this is as good as it gets, like the old movie with Jack Nicholson, but it can be better. You've got things you probably haven't aspired to yet.
Well, just by sharing with us on this Charge podcast today, Chris, you have inspired someone and you made a difference in them because they're looking at their business. I've already looked at mine. I've already realized I got to do some better things in lead generation side of things, looking at those steps that we talked about. So I know there's someone else that's made a big difference too. Share with them one more time and we'll put in show notes, the actual spelling and stuff, but your website if they want to get to it, Chris.
Sure. It's Chura Consulting.com. So that's my last name, Chura Consulting.com.
Okay. So check that out. He's got some great information that's on the website, that whole process that we went through. It talks a little bit about that on the website. But if you're interested and you're looking for that person where you don't want to pay that full-time sales manager, that's what Chris does. Reach out to him, check him out, and he's got some great information. If not on the website, he'd love to be able to share with you. Chargers, I hope this really helps you today. And Chris, I can't thank you enough for saying yes to be on the Charge podcast.
Well, thank you, Gary. It's great talking to you again.
When I requested it to him and stuff, he said, sure, I'd like to do that. And I know sometimes I take people out of their comfort zone and things of that nature, but it's sharing information. That's what we're here on this podcast about, and bring in different topics that affects different people at different times. So I hope it really benefited you today to be able to learn that information. Now, the big thing, as I tell you, is really take a hard look at what action are you going to move forward. Chris shared some really steps that we can do in our businesses, but what are you going to take from it? What do you need to improve in your sales process or management or even in your lead generation, and then go out there and start making those happen. Chargers, we're going to come back next week with another great guest, so you need to join us. And remember, go out each and every day and make it a great day. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.